Hello and welcome back. It is time for match 3, and I am pumped. I am super ready to play this match. Even if it lasts 40, 50 minutes, however long it always does with Esper, I still think we could easily time our opponent out, given the opportunity. Man, wouldn't it be ironic if we lost this game due to time? But regardless, yeah, I don't have much to say for an opening, so let's just go straight ahead into the games. Alright, we have a match. See what we're playing against. We have a hand that has a pretty nice curve. We got a Shark Typhoon, which helps us pressure our opponent if they're on something non-aggressive, and our hand is well equipped to deal with any kind of creature deck our opponent could have. We're lacking a little bit of counter magic, so this hand might be weak to a combo deck, perhaps, but I mean, you can't turn away a hand with turn 1 Celestial Colonnade. Are you kidding me? That's what I live for when I play this deck. Turn 1 Colonnade. Chef's kiss. Of course, on the other side of the table, when we play turn 1 Colonnade, our opponent is going to laugh at us and be like, turn 1 Colonnade in 2020? Excuse me? This one's kind of annoying, though. So, there's an argument for just holding up Path here, because we might be in for a lot of damage, but I think it's more likely that our opponent is on some sort of landfall strategy and they plan on playing a second creature this upcoming turn and not trying to swing in for a bunch. In fact, I could see them playing a fetch land for turn, playing another 1-drop with landfall, and then just passing, and then next turn going for a big turn with double fetch land or something. I think that there is no time like the present to get Celestial Colonnade into play. It's a little bit of a risk, but I think that we can afford to do this. Well, they're fetching now, so maybe I was wrong. Shock a green source here. Renin 6. That one we can't very easily answer in our current main board. We do have Eliminate, but I mean, okay. So I think we're getting a tapped Watery Grave here. We're most likely making a chump blocker or just a threat to clock this Renin 6 with our Shark Typhoon, so I'm not really inclined to cycle that one for 0. So I could see a world where our opponent commits another threat, plays a fetch land, and goes to combat, and we path one of their threats, and then next turn we play a land, cast a Archmage's Charm or Esper Charm if we happen to draw it, something along those lines, and then the turn after we just line up the Supreme Verdict to wipe our opponent's entire battlefield, and hopefully then be able to start clocking our opponent's Ren, or even just play Teferi and minus on the Ren. We'll see. Minusing Teferi on the Ren doesn't sound like a super winning proposition, because it's likely we just lose our Teferi to a Bolt or something. Renegade Rallier. Okay, going super deep. Let's just let this go. Let everything happen until our opponent goes to combat, and then we'll fire off the path. Although I don't think there's anything else they can do here for 1 mana that would want us to not play the path. I mean, clearly gaining 8 life seems much better. And, in fact, this is one of the situations where maybe it was much better that we didn't path until now, because our opponent might not have gone for this big explosive turn with their Rallier otherwise. Alright, let's path before they attack, just in case there's something strange. I don't know if there's anything that triggers off of attacks, or is better if you have already attacked, other than, obviously, the card that's played in Prowess a lot, Light Up the Stage. If our opponent was hoping to damage us with this dude and cast a Light Up the Stage, then they were in for a nasty surprise. Okay, so we didn't draw anything to do this turn. This could be the turn we're cycling to make a 1/1, but that doesn't really pressure our opponent's ring, because it just kills our Shark Typhoon token after it takes 1, and I mean, that does take several turns off of the Ren ultimate clock, but I mean, we also would just potentially lose our guy to a Bolt, and I don't know. We also now have Cryptic to bounce the Ren to try to keep it in check. So maybe it's okay to Shark Typhoon. We also need to dig a little bit deeper here, potentially. I don't know, though. It's not obvious, because we have our next turn planned. It's either going to be holding up Cryptic or casting Supreme Verdict. And we have 2 turns away from this ultimate, so I'm not really sure. We can always fetch for basic anyways, though, so let's just get our island out there and pass it back. Our opponent is giving us double question marks in the chat here. They don't know why we're thinking, but You guys at home know, so slow control players and all that, you know. I mean, you might think it's trivial, but deciding when to play out your fetch lands is actually quite important. Especially if we were playing Mystic Sanctuary, which unfortunately we're not, which has, by this point, and it come to my attention as a huge mistake. I think we should be playing at least one Sanctuary, but even right now, we wouldn't be activating it. So this, like, we wouldn't be able to play all the manlands that we're playing. The Sunbite Canyon is kind of annoying with their Rin, as it's a draw engine. Yeah, I don't know. And they do go ahead and get the Sunbite Canyon back. Bloodbraid Elf. It's not really what I expected them to be playing, but that's cool. Step Links. Well, Supreme Verdict is looking like the move here. Do we still not want to cycle our Shark Typhoon into this Rin? It's not really obvious to me. I guess we don't. We might need to make a larger creature later on that doesn't die to Rin, so let's just untap here and Verdict. We can't afford to let our opponent get a big swing in here, so pass it back. If they're banking on Rin ult to finish the job, then we can stop that. I do feel very exposed in this situation, though. I'm not gonna lie. Okay, starting off by cycling Canopy is good news for us. It means they don't have an immediate threat that they just want to jam into play. Whoa. Excuse me? Just pass back? Okay, we could Teferi tuck this Rin. We can't Teferi uptick because then they know that their Rin is not going to stick around. I don't think that we want to let them just lightning bolt us every game instead of drawing dead lands for the rest of the game. So I think we just have to deal with this Rin, which means in their upkeep or draw step perhaps where we're going to bounce it, we can't give them another turn. So if we had cycled Shark Typhoon, then we wouldn't be in the situation. We could hold up the Cryptic throughout this turn, so that's definitely one potential downside. I think the biggest upside play here is to jam Teferi in minus, and if we lose it to a Bolt, then that sucks, but you know what? I think we need this Teferi in play to continue to be able to win the game here, so let's just upkeep bounce this Ren in 6, I suppose. Not the most elegant play, but not much we can do about it, so. And obviously, our opponent hasn't played any burn spells yet, so if we just jam Teferi here, there's pretty much a guarantee that we'd lose it to a burn spell. Against our opponent's 7 cards in hand. This is quite scary, but they did just pass last turn, so I don't know, maybe they just have all lands in hand? They've been using every land drop to play this canyon, so they could have just drawn multiple lands. Not unheard of for the landfall deck. Okay, there's the Step Links. This one doesn't have haste, so that's nice. Ren in 6, of course. No Spell Snare to punish. It's okay. Alright, we'll fetch. No reason to save it. We have a fetch in hand for a potential Jace. We only have one Jace anyways, and there's no reason to try to save it for like a some kind of Mystic Sanctuary type involvement since we're not actually playing it. So getting a white source to make ourselves comfortable with Supreme Verdict and Path and whatnot. And I think we're probably just jamming Teferi, upping, and then planning to cycle Shark Typhoon to make a blocker. I mean, we could Teferi minus the Step Links, and that's not, like, awful, but yeah, I guess we're just trying to make a blocker. They might swing at the Teferi. Nah, that's just wishful thinking. There's no way they do that. Slightly punished for playing a fetch land out here, because drawing the island means that we could have had a painless source to make the Shark Typhoon token, but we'll deal. Don't need this upkeep stop anymore. I mean, the safest play would have been to minus on the Step Links, but we need something in play here to start pushing our way towards an eventual victory. If we just try to play this 1-for-1, they're going to top deck burn spells, and, you know, things are not going to be good. And now we're really missing Mystic Sanctuary because we only have a few copies of Supreme Verdict. Sanctuarying back a Supreme Verdict here would probably be good game if they continue to apply pressure to the board. Kind of a shame. And their Rin means they're going to be able to trigger the landfall and the step links and continue to, really clock with it, so. I mean, they are drawing here, which makes sense. They need to continue to get their card advantage out of this Rin. I would be interested to see if they clock the Teferi or us here. We'll let them attack, see where they're going. We're probably cycling Shark Typhoon here anyways. They're attacking us. I don't know if 2 damage is enough for us to want to block. I think it's not. Then it comes to the question of, do we cycle Shark Typhoon now or wait until they're in step? If we cycle it now, then we'd be forced to block in order to get any advantage out of the fact that we have a blocker right now anyways, and we're not really planning on blocking, so let's just do it on in-step. Represent some counter magic or something. I mean, we're not even representing, we're actually just factually holding up counter magic. They do choose to ignore the Teferi. It would be nice to draw, like, it would be nice if we could elect not to cycle Shark Typhoon, top deck an Esper Charm or Archmage's Charm. Archmage's Charm would be insane here. Yeah, we probably cannot afford to let this rally or resolve. Getting back, I mean, it only gets back a land, but it is also a threat in addition, so let's Logic Knot. 1 should be good enough, I think. Yep. Now we have the ability to minus on our opponent's Nakatl, force them to use resources to be able to attack with their step links in the first place. I don't know how many fetch targets they actually play, to be honest. They could be very close to running out of fetch targets, meaning that we'd only be clocked for 2 a turn by this step links. They're doing a damage to us with their Rin. That's curious. Right, we'll go ahead and fetch here, as it doesn't change the fact that we still die to Double Bolt regardless. We'll get a Watery Grave, so we can Esper Charm into and eliminate and still cast it. There's an Esper Charm. So now we can play Shark Typhoon and play Esper Charm, making a 3/3 blocker. It's only if we uptick Teferi. Is hard casting a Shark Typhoon the best way to win this game? We could also cycle Shark Typhoon for 1. Now, we don't want to do this main phase, though, because of their Rin in 6. I don't know, it's really rough. We could Esper Charm main phase, untap 2, and have a Shark Typhoon for 3, cycle to surprise our opponent. And maybe we draw another Supreme Verdict here or something like that in order to gain something. We're still upticking Teferi regardless, so we'll start there. Jace is decent, actually. It means that their step links won't be able to attack us. So we can play Jace, untap 2, cycle Shark Typhoon to make a chump blocker for the Nakatl if we need it. That's not bad. And it gives them an alternate target for their Lightning Bolt as well. Yeah, let's go ahead and commit the Jace here. If he just gains us a couple life, then that's probably fine. We'll bounce the step links as that one represents potentially more damage. Here goes an island. And we'll pass it back, untapping 2 with our Teferi. Of course, it's going to be the 2 most varied color sources here, and pass it back. We're getting pretty close to being able to just hold up Celestial Colonnade. So, we're going to be hard-pressed to win this game regardless, though. I don't think we have any life gain in the main board, so we just die to Double Bolt eventually. Although we have lots of ways to accrue card advantage here. So it's possible that we could keep up with their burn spells just by virtue of having more cards than them. Okay, yeah, I think we have no choice but to cycle this Shark Typhoon and trade with their Nakatl. I mean, it's draw a card plus a kill spell. That's fine. We have win cons in play, potentially, although they're not particularly fast. have to admit. We're losing to Double Bolt here, but, I mean, we can't win against everything. Let's just play to what's on the board. Field Ruin, not seeming magnificent here. Path. Okay. Well, now we lose to a single Bolt. I almost guarantee our opponent has it. We also lose to another Wrenn and 6, because they just... Yeah, there's the Bolt. Okay. Well, we knew we were probably going to lose this game, so that's fine. We have Timelies in the sideboard for specifically this matchup, so let's start there, of course. Timely Reinforcements. Aether Gust seems good against their green spells and Wrenn and 6s. Celestial Purge doesn't seem the worst, although it's not going to hit a lot of their creatures, from what it appears, so maybe we don't want Purge. Dispel hits burn spells like Bolt, potentially something like Artarka's Command or Boros Charm if they play it. Dispel is very mana efficient as well, so, I mean, it's kind of narrow, but I think it's good enough. Spell Snare would hit the 2-mana haste landfall dude if they're playing it. They could also be playing Tarmogoyf in like more of a Zoo-style strategy. We did see Bloodbraid Elf, and Spell Snare does hit Wrenn and 6 as well, so I guess we want to keep it. Path is kind of embarrassing, although we might need it to not lose to their one-drop landfallers. Reband is obviously just complete garbage here. Force Negation, I mean, it's good against Wrenn and 6, that's about it. Yeah, let's not. We have ways to deal with Wrenn and 6 from the board. In fact, we might need to be bringing in one Celestial Purge just to make sure. Jace is bad against an opponent who can put things on the board, and Esper Charm is bad against an opponent who's trying to play the board and doesn't care about what's left in their hand. I mean, it can be very good if you deal with the board and then, or like Esper Charm on their instep, untap Supreme Verdict to deal with the board, and then they're left with nothing. Like, that can be very strong, but, I mean, Logic Knot is good against their counterspells, but, not counterspells, yeah, they're playing counterspells. It's good against their burn spells, but Dispel is better, and Logic Knot is absolutely horrendous when our opponent's already on the board. Cryptic Command's a little slow, but tap draw into Supreme Verdict or Timely is probably necessary. Archmage's Charm steals a creature if we want it to. We gotta bring in a card here. It could be the Esper Charm, but it's kind of slow. I think the card that makes the most sense is Jace, but it also simultaneously doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Maybe we just bring in the second Purge. It hits Bloodbraid Elf as well, which seems awful, but, I mean, we gotta deal with what's on the board, so... They could be playing Clothis or something, who knows. Maybe Purge is good here. We'll play first, for sure. Don't want to give our opponent that luxury. We have Path for an opponent's turn 1 play, and if we top deck a 2-mana spell to interact, then it's good. And we have Teferi to eventually pull ahead. Esper Charm looking a little weak here, but we're on the play, so it's not as bad. We'll try it, but I could definitely see this hand going exactly the same way Game 1 played out. We could have played our tapped Watery Grave on 1, so that we delay our decision with the Floodstrand, because we might need to play around Blood Moon. I don't know if we can play around Blood Moon and still set up our mana base to cast our spells and deal with our opponent's board all at the same time. We might if we had to, but I don't know if I want to play around Blood Moon at this point in time. Since we sided out our remands and Logic Knots, I think we're just gonna delay our Path to Exile for this upcoming turn if our opponent does have a 1-drop here. Because we're just gonna be ramping them to a 3-mana spell on turn 2 instead of a 2-mana spell. And there's no real point in doing that. If we do draw a Celestial Purge or an Aether Gust, there's some possibility that we want to cast that instead of the Path, so we'll see, though. I suppose it's also bad if we draw Shark Typhoon and want to cycle it for 0, but not really worried about that. Well, this one is one that we want to purge, so we're definitely gonna delay our Path to Exile decision, and we'll fetch for a shock land here. I just don't think our opponent's on Blood Moon. It doesn't make sense with their fetch lands. Timely Reinforcements is exactly what we were hoping to top deck, which is why we play 3 of them. So, I mean, yeah, let's just play tap Watery Grave, take the least amount of damage possible, pass it back. If our opponent goes crazy on the Hellhound, then we can path it. Otherwise, we'll just untap and slam timely. We'll probably be at less life than our opponent. We'll see, though. They could be playing their mana base aggressively in order to cut off our timely, preemptively. If we're just taking 2 damage here, then I don't care. Another Hellhound, huh? My kingdom for a detention sphere. A step links as well. Yeah. Okay. Do we want to use our timely just to make creatures? Because if not, we might need to throw a path to exile this turn so that we can top deck another kill spell and take as little damage as possible this upcoming turn. I really hate it, but I think we just have to do it. And let's path the step links because the Hellhounds are targets for celestial purges. If we just draw back-to-back purge, then this will give us something to do with those purges. I don't know if we should be waiting on this timely until it's gaining us life as well, because it has a dual function of, 1, giving us blockers for our opponent's creatures, but 2, also getting us out of burn range. And if it's not getting us out of burn range, then we run into a similar situation as game 1. I don't know. Aether Gust. Okay, that's a good one. So our path situation definitely paid off. We'll play this land here because if we decide to do absolutely nothing with our mana, Esper Charm is the best thing we can be doing, not Field of Ruin. This is one of those matchups where we wish Field of Ruin was literally anything else in our deck. Maybe even just a spell here instead of a land, because it's not casting a lot of our cards. If this were a basic Plains, we'd be able to at least play Supreme Verdict or something. If we hadn't drawn Gust here, we might have been forced to play Timely Reinforcements just to make blockers, but since we have Gust, this is probably fine. Here's a Bloodbraid, almost assuredly. Okay. Let's see what they hit. Step links. Annoying, but that's fine. Definitely not gusting the Bloodbraid, as they'll just put it on top and get an additional card out of it, so let's save this Gust. For a Hellhound, do we want to cast it to stop us from taking 7 down to 10? I think we don't. Let's see, if we Gust, we take 5 down to 12 and can still Timely. If we Gust into Timely without casting the Esper Charm, then we have exact blockers for all of our opponent's creatures, however, which is relevant. So we won't be taking any damage, but we can probably afford to take 1 hit anyways. I think this is the best turn to cast our Esper Charm, so let's wait on the Gust. Yeah, we have to make our window for this Esper Charm. And here we can Charm to make our opponent discard down to 1, and we'll probably gain a lot of life that way. They're most likely holding on to burn spells here. And that also stops them from preventing us from having blockers, most likely. So I think that's the best mode. If we draw even a single land here, then we'll be casting Teferi somewhat soon. So let's just get our 2-for-1 out of it. The cards we draw off the top could just be land, and that doesn't stack up well against our opponent's potential burn spells. So yeah, hitting double creatures is just fantastic here. Eliminate. Well, that also rewards us for not having Gusted. But our opponent's not holding up Skullcrack or something like that. So let's... I don't know why I tapped the Watery Grave. That doesn't cast Timely. Let's just go ahead and Timely right now and get it over with. That's our first turn of tapping out for the game. Our second turn is kind of a half turn since we get to untap 2 with Teferi anyways. So if we miss the land, we have a double spell, which is fantastic. We're just yielding through this turn. We don't have anything. And do we just chump, or do we try to trade creatures off the battlefield here? I think we chump. Because at this point, we just gotta find... I mean, we can take 4 down to 12, and that's not the worst. Let's do this, because our Gust and Eliminate will help keep our battlefield under control here. If we draw a Supreme Verdict, then, whatever. The last card is a Knight of the Reliquary. Interesting. There's a Cryptic to tap draw, which is interesting. Their Knight will let them trigger landfall for these guys, so we want to prevent that, and land is still a good draw for them, but it only does 3 damage to us, so let's just eliminate this Knight off the bat. We could Gust it and see if they want to redraw it, so we can replay this turn. Now, let's just eliminate the Knight. Get it out of here. Hold up our Gust, so we can interact with a creature if they have it. The worst draw for us, for them to get here, would be Bloodbraid Elf, since it pressures us and gives them an additional spell at the same time. Land is a pretty annoying draw, even though it's a land, just because of their landfall creatures, but if they draw a non-land here, then these guys are not pressuring us at all, so we'll see how this goes. Seems like it might have been a burn spell. I think that's the only thing they wouldn't just snap off here. Field of Ruin lets us cast Teferi. If they have a fetch land, then we're going to lose our Teferi. Well, not necessarily, because we can hold up Gust. Yeah, I mean, it's time for the classic theme for this deck. Now or never. Slam this Teferi into play. Off ticket. We gotta start getting cards out of this guy as fast as possible. We have something to do with our mana as well, so this definitely is the best possible turn for it. Untap our 2 best lands here. And we'll see what our opponent does. Wild Nacatl is that something that we want to Gust? I think it could be. If they have a Wrenn, we don't care that much about it. Let's just convert this Gust immediately. If they want to redraw this one, that's fine. If they have land, then they get to... If they have a regular land, they get to clock our Teferi down to 2. If they have a fetch land, we lose our Teferi, which is annoying, but I think it's dealable. For those of you wondering, dealable is a word that I invented, which happens to mean something that we can deal with. So, yes, I'm very competent at the English language. Thank you very much. I appreciate the compliment. No fetch land. No fetch land. Atarka's Command. That still... Oh, they did the damage to us. So it looks like they're not even bothering to clock Teferi here. Which could be correct. Again, this is a byproduct... Oh, they are clocking Teferi with the creatures. Okay. I actually think it would have been correct for them to just send everything at us. Because it would undo the work that our timely reinforcements did for us here. So, let's just get the Colonnade out. Do we want to Field of Ruin our opponent? Yeah, I think we have to use this opportunity to convert. I don't think it matters what we hit, so let's just choose the Stomping Ground. Get an island, of course. Gotta fix these Field of Ruin colorless sources while we have the ability. It'll make our game easier going forward, and we definitely don't want to be Field of Ruin during their turn for obvious reasons. Alright, let's go to our end step. We don't want to yield to this necessarily, so we'll untap our 2 blue sources so we could Archmage's Charm draw into a 2-mana spell if we want to do that. We're definitely in a very commanding position here. Thalia. Do we care about that? I mean, they're not clocking us this turn, so we might as well. Yeah, I mean, we don't want to use a Cryptic for this, since we might want to tap draw with a Cryptic, so let's let it go and just draw 2 on our opponent's end step. We could gain control of a Step Links or something with our Charm, but, I mean, I don't think that's really necessary. We could just draw 2 kill spells off of the Charm instead, and that would be much better than gain control of 1 card for it, so... Okay, lands. Not fantastic. Oh, Supreme Verdict is probably game over. Let's see. So let's just cast the Verdict before we decide what we're doing with our mana here. We'll be able to hold up 5 mana after this. If we Field of Ruin, we'll have 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? Hold on. So if we activate Field, we'll have 1 plus a land for turn plus the 2 we untap. So we'll be able to field and still hold up Cryptic. So I think we want to use our Field of Ruin this turn. Oh, no, wait. Yeah, we're not going to be able to use field, so let's do this. We are not holding up Cryptic now, though. Oh, yeah, we are. Yes, we are, because the Thalia is gone. So, yeah, we're good here. Almost messed things up here, but that's fine. And we have to untap blue sources here, so we'll do it. And we'll pass it back, and we probably win this game. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Definitely a very tense game. Do we want to change anything about our sideboarding? Not really. Yeah, I still think that the Jace is bad. If we had Jace instead of Teferi in that scenario, it would have very easily just died to our opponent having any land, any burn spell, all that stuff. Jace minusing on a creature and then dying is not impressive. Teferi lets us use additional mana. It lets us get forward in game plan. Jace is kind of weak. Let's just run it back. Every time I reach up to my laptop keyboard here, I keep instinctively putting my hand over the W, A, S, and D keys because I've been playing a lot of Among Us lately and moving around with those keys with my left hand here. I just think it's very interesting. And, yeah, Timely Reinforcements showed its teeth there. Definitely explaining why we have that one in particular in our deck. This hand is obscenely slow. I mean, I like Teferi. I only play 2, though. I don't want to see one in every single opening hand. Of course, it gives us a way to get forward, but we have to have something to interact earlier or we just die. So, and this hand is much better. We have its Supreme Verdict if we top deck a white source, so we have 2 points of interaction, so we'll keep. Now, the question is, do we drop a land here in the hopes that we'll just top deck several lands, or do we bottom the Teferi? I mean, if we bottom Teferi, we have a risk of not running into anything to push our advantage, but, I mean, we lose this game to not hitting land drops. We lose a lot of games to just not hitting land drops, so let's try to avoid losing the game. Alright, Timely Reinforcements is great, as always. They do have a Tarka's command, and that one can stop our Timely from letting us gain life as well, so it's definitely something to be aware of. It doesn't necessarily have to be Skullcrack. If this Eliminate were a Fatal Push, we'd be able to deal with this Step Links this turn and save ourselves 4 life points. And then again, our opponent could just slam a Wrenn and 6, and then maybe this Eliminate does double time. Well, there's the Wrenn and 6. Now, it depends on our opponent's draw here, whether we have to eliminate the Wrenn and 6 or a creature. The Wrenn and 6 definitely represents a problem with their creatures, though, because as we saw in the last game, eventually they run out of land drops and their creatures stop existing on the battlefield, basically. I mean, they still give our opponent the possibility of pressuring our Planeswalker out of the blue, so we can't just ignore them, but they become more or less dead cards. So, something to consider. We have to shock here to represent something. We're going to be using our mana regardless, so. There's the 2 mana landfall guy that I was talking about before, Brushfire Elemental. So that definitely means that Purge is going to be very good in this matchup. Has plenty of targets. Another fetch land is quite unfortunate for us here. And I think we do have to go after our opponent's creatures to try to keep our life total nice and high. In fact, if this Eliminate had been a push, we could have gusted and then snap push this upcoming turn. So we're definitely really missing Fatal Push here. 2 mana and 1 mana are very different. Always remember that 2 mana is twice as much as 1 mana. It's not just 1 mana more, it's twice as much, and that has a huge impact. Okay, we definitely have to get rid of this Brushfire Elemental since our Snapcaster can't chump it. And it's also more damage anyways, so let's just get that out of the way right now. And I think we probably want to just eliminate it. Gusting it doesn't do much. So, I mean, actually, hold on. Let's rethink that, though, because our Gust can't touch the Step Links. So, I mean, I'm just gonna Aether Gust the Elemental here. If they redraw it and recast it, I mean, it's really unfortunate since our opponent has infinite fetch lands basically with their Wrenn and 6, but gotta do what you can do. Eventually we'll hit this Supreme Verdict, and then our opponent's Wrenn and 6 won't be doing too much for them. Celestial Purge is not bad here. Again, we could cast Fatal Push plus Celestial Purge this turn, but we don't have that. Do we shock and play the Timely, or do we just eliminate the Step Links? I think we just play the Eliminate, or Celestial Purge, depending on what happens. I don't know. That could have been wrong, because that was our window to play around Atarka's command, and we know they have another creature incoming here, so if they have a Bolt, we're dead. I don't know. Even if we had casted Timely there, we still might be in pretty bad shape, so. We'll see. You know what? I never considered it, but if we were going to gust their elemental, we could have done it in response to one of their fetch triggers. Okay. So we're not technically dead, but we are most probably dead. Let's purge the elemental, I suppose, and hope we're not dead. Definitely losing this game due to having Eliminate over Fatal Push, so. And they had a burn spell, so I guess we're dead. It was Atarka's command to add insult to injury, so. Anyways, you can do the math there, knowing the cards that our opponent had in hand, whether or not we would have been dead or not. I guess we would have had chump blockers for this, so I think our only line to survive there was actually to just take the 2 damage, cast the Timely. Yeah, I mean, not much we can do about it. I will say these types of matchups, very fast aggro matchups with burn to supply their pressure with a little bit of reach, those are definitely going to be the most difficult matchups to win with Esper, so it's very much like burn in that case. I don't know if I would consider it worse or better. I mean, we saw in game 2 that our opponent ended up having just a bunch of 0/1 creatures in play that effectively let us win the game, so because of that, I would probably have to say that this matchup is better than burn. As burn never has dead cards pretty much, and sometimes our opponent on this deck does, but that said, this deck can explode a lot faster. So, anyways, that, my friends, was match 3. Of course, we lost to an aggro deck. What else would it have been? And yeah, let me know what you think about the deck. I think that match in particular is a very strong argument for getting this one out of here, make those some fatal pushes. So we'll see. Eliminate is still some tech that we are testing, and like I said, aggro matchups tend to be difficult matchups anyway, so perhaps we want to just concede that that's going to be a thing and try to make our matchup against other decks better. Eliminate would help us against Jund, for example, but I don't know. I guess you could argue as well that our matchup against Jund is pretty even, if not favored. I mean, we could lose to them having a Wrenn and 6 on board, but post-board we have Gust and Celestial Purge to deal with that, so for that reason, maybe we should aim more towards playing against the aggro decks and winning game 1s or games 2 and 3 against aggro decks like our opponent was playing, and just play Fatal Push instead. So, anyways, definitely some data points to take from this match. Speaking of data points, if you happen to receive any kind of information or entertainment, enjoyment out of this video, then go ahead and give me a like, a comment, a subscribe, all that good stuff. You know how this works at this point, and yeah. I will see you guys for the next match. This is Red Face Menace, signing off.